E. How about the piano now? Got harmonica going down there? Key of E, okay. You play in C, and we'll just have cacophony, like the world. Say what? Oh, that was a fabulous ending. Almost as good as the start. Good evening. Come sing with us, God's Counting on Me, or if you prefer, Earth's Counting on Me. And I think that's the way I'm going to go for the first part of it. A little bit of earth in here. When we look and we can see things are not what they should be. Earth's counting on me. I said girth that time. God's counting on you. Now moving to earth. When we look and we can see things are not what they should be. Earth's counting on me. Earth's counting on you. Oh, hoping we'll all pull through. Hoping we'll all pull through. Hoping we'll all pull through. Me and you.
Well, it's time to turn things round. Trickle up and trickle down.
Earth's counting on me. Earth's counting on you.
And when drill,
Baby drill,
turns to spill.
spill, baby spill. Earth's counting on me. Earth's counting on you. Hoping we'll all pull through. Hoping we'll all pull through. Hoping we'll all pull through. Me and you. Keep away from those tar sands with our dirty, oily hands. 'Cause Earth's counting on me. Earth's counting on you. And now let's all take the oath. We can sustain unlimited growth. Earth's counting on me. Earth's counting on you. Hoping we'll all pull through. more time, a little faster. Hoping we'll all pull through. Hoping we'll all pull through. Hoping we'll all pull through. Me and you. Hey, we did it. We all ended at the same time. Thank you. I don't know if we've done Hunker Down yet, have we?
Yeah.
We have?
A long time ago.
Hunker down to the sound of the driving rain. Let me lie in the eye of the hurricane. Hear your call to us all in the peril and pain. Help us stand, joining hands, and serve you again. Let's sing it again now. Here we go. Hunker down to the sound of the driving rain. Let me lie in the eye of the hurricane. Hear your call to us all through the peril and pain. Help us stand, joining hands, and serve you again. For you are not in the earthquake, not in the wind, not in the fire as the tempest begins, but the still small voice that calls us to skies on a new rugged earth. As the old stay on that list, we're gonna sing that again, okay? Try it again. You are not in the earthquake, not in the wind, not in the fire as the tempest begins, but the still small voice that calls us to ride on a new rugged earth as the old earth hunker down to the sound of the driving rain. Let me lie in the eye of the hurricane. Hear your call to us all in the peril and pain. Help us stand, joining hands, and serve you again. For you are not in the earthquake, not in the wind,
Not in the fire as the tempest begins, but the still small voice that calls us to rise on a new rugged earth as the old earth
hunker down to the sound of the driving rain. Let me lie in the eye of the hurricane. Hear your call to us all in the peril and pain. Help us stand, joining hands, and serve you again. Hunker down to the sound of the driving rain. Let me lie in the eye of the hurricane. Hear your call to us all in the peril and pain. Help us stand, joining hands, and serve you again. Thank you. As we were working on the CD with a lot of this stuff just a few years back, the night before we were going to start our recording process, we were working in somebody's living room with a computer and some fairly decent microphones. Reminded me where I got my start in recording. It was in Barking Dog Studio, because it was another person's living room, and there was indeed a barking dog on several of the tapes. But now this song came to me, and it's pretty rough on the CD, but we'll try it now, and it's my own testimony about what we've been listening to tonight. Come, old pilgrim, walk with me into a world we dimly see. The tide has turned, the tempests blow, the tipping point is past, we know. Though we were not the masters, robber barons, kings and queens, we pleasured in green pastures as we live beyond our means. Come, old pilgrim, hold my hand, stumble toward a savage land. We took our comforts, even abundance we have flourished. Now we must do with less, so the young ones may be nourished with peace and gentleness. So come, O pilgrim, walk beside into a future wild and wide. Bless earth's children on their way, brave and strong for a better day. Come, O pilgrim, walk beside into a future wild and wide. Bless earth's children on their way, brave and strong for a better day. Thank you. A lot of these songs are on a CD and in a songbook called Pilgrim on a Brave New Planet over at the bookstore. And I also have a full line of brushes and toiletries if you're interested as well. So, okay. As you know, we wrote some new words to the times that are changing. How are we doing on our time? Well, we're getting there. Come gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changing. Now, could I hear you a little more? It's hard to hear you up here on the stage because we're making so much of a racket ourselves. Let's sing that. Let's start from the beginning back. Okay. Here we go. Come gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changing. The sages gave warning, the evidence was strong, but the oil in our comforts just dragged us along. Prophets predicted, we tuned out their song. We wouldn't hear what they were saying. Oh, we thought their statistics were biased and wrong, but the times they are a-changing. So gather round, people, rise up and stand. Unite with each other on earth and sand. Stave off the worst, do the best that we can. On a planet so ragged and raging, come reason together, join head, heart, and hand, for the times they are a-changing. I think I mentioned that I'd been in the South Pacific at the Marshall Islands and saw the collapse of several feet of their tiny atoll. And then I heard on the radio that the same thing was happening in Tuvalu, which is a series of islands even further away from us and therefore out of mind, out of sight, and vice versa. So this is called Tuvalu.
Tuvalu, Tuvalu, don't
Let's sing that together now. Can we see it on the screen? Good, let's sing. Take it, Alice.
Tuvalu, Tuvalu, tiny islands in the ocean blue. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, you live or die by what we do.
Blue lagoon and coral sand mark the beauty of your land, but ice is melting far away, and the sea is rising in the bay. Sing now. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, tiny islands in the ocean blue. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, you live or die by what we do. Cyclones blowing to your grief, coral dying on the reef, fish no longer come in swarm as the ocean water warms.
Some still fight with tanks and guns, but a new war has begun. This is how the world attacks, with car exhaust and chimney stacks.
Tuvalu, Tuvalu, tiny islands in the ocean blue. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, you live or die by what we do.
Hear the island people say, join us in more gentle ways. Treat all life with precious worth. Live more simply on the earth.
Battle flood as rising seas, swamp your homes and your breadfruit trees. Time to leave, you cannot stay. Where to go, you cannot say. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, tiny islands in the ocean blue. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, you live or die by what we do. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, tiny islands in the ocean blue. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, you live or die by what we do. Thank you. Thank you for singing with us.
Hello again. Welcome back. Well, I mean, welcome back to here, because I know you've actually been here all day working, haven't we all? It's splendid to have you again, and welcome to the second evening plenary of this wonderful conference. Thank you, pickers. Pickers, you're so great. Don't you think Jim Manley is something else to have written the words to the flower song that Seeger gave us? Really beautiful. And our soloists, this is quite a group. I guess a person really ought to retire to Pilgrim Place so they can become one of the pickers, I guess, huh? Anyhow, thank you so much, pickers, for your work. Tonight, we're in for treats. We have two powerful women who are going to be our speakers. And we have a powerful woman who's also going to speak to you, welcoming you in the name of Pitzer College. Pitzer is an environmentally sustainable place. It's a pathfinder, really. And to welcome us from Pitzer College is Professor Brenda Sarathy. She is a leader in environmental analysis and action. She serves on the board of the Center for Community Action and Environmental Justice, one of the oldest and most well-known environmental justice organizations in the whole Inland Empire. Her current research focuses on the social and scientific regulation of water pollution in California. Please welcome Professor Sarathi, who will introduce you eventually to our evening speaker. Now I've been told that, you know how things sometimes go? Actually, I was supposed to introduce you first of all to Jeffrey Kuan, who is coming from the airport, but he wasn't here. Well, guess what? He just made it. So, welcome then, Jeffrey Kuan. He is a theological educator whom I just love. He is the president of Claremont School of Theology, where I taught for many years. He is a man who is so committed to justice, justice for religious pluralism and understanding one another, justice for persons who are excluded. He's been a leader in the reconciling movement, justice for this earth. If you name a place where there is injustice, Jeffrey Kuan is there arguing that the right thing shall be done. He is a wonderful man, a marvelous president of Claremont School of Theology, which, like Pitzer, is a participating sponsor of this great conference. In these times of climate distress, he's a strong supporter of sustainability, not only in the school campus, but in the education of those who will go out to churches, bringing with them from their education here a desire to see sustainability in the communities where they serve. So I will come back later to my introduction to Brenda, but now you welcome Jeffrey Kuan.
Thank you so much, Professor Suhaki. On behalf of Claremont School of Theology, I want to extend my very warm welcome to all of you to this very important conference. At Claremont School of Theology, we are so delighted to claim so many significant theologians who are very much a part of this movement of working toward an ecological civilization, and to seize this as a significant time and alternative toward that. I want to express my deep appreciation to the brain of this conference, Professor John Cobb, for all the work that he has done over the years at Claremont School of Theology to lead us in this direction. This conference could not have come at a better time for Claremont School of Theology. We are becoming more and more conscious of the fact that we need at Claremont School of Theology to seize this as an alternative to live into the next phase of the school's history, into an ecological civilization. What it means for us is that we need to begin to think about the footprint that we are leaving behind, and so we have now we are launching into a campus master plan that will help us think about the kind of campus that is more responsible toward the kind of ecology and environment we are in to do theological education. And so we are talking about green energy. We are talking about building hopefully to build a solar plant ourselves and reduce the number of buildings that we are working on, that we need for theological education. Also important, our Board of Trustees have been in conversation in the last few months to begin to think about divestment from fossil fuel. And I am very committed to continue to encourage our Board of Trustees to put together a plan that we can begin to implement. And so I hope to be able to announce at another time about this work that has begun and will continue to do. As we begin to think about ecological civilization, part of being able to live out the kind of ecological civilization is to find a way to live better with our neighbors. And so at Claremont School of Theology, we have launched a few years ago into a significant emphasis on inter-religious education. And today we have incredible partners with Bayon Claremont, which is an Islamic graduate school, the first Islamic graduate school started here in North America. We are also a partner with the Academy for Jewish Religion, California, the University of the West, a Buddhist university, and most recently, we have begun serious conversations with the Dharmic traditions, and together we are working to train leaders for the future of our religious institutions and for our world. And so Claremont School of Theology is hoping to continue to be a significant leader in this direction of pluralism and in this direction of inter-religious education and interfaith work that we must do if we are serious about the kind of world we want to leave behind for our next generation and generations to come. So, I hope that you will continue to follow us on our webpage as well as on our Facebook and other social media to see the kind of interesting and significant work, important work that we must do for the kind of world that we all aspire to live into. Thank you very much.
I've been asked to make an announcement, actually. Some of you were intending to attend the love class. Well, unfortunately, it seems to have been told it wasn't in Pitzer College. You need to check with Andrew to find out where, in fact, that is scheduled. Oh, I know. It's room 209 in the Broad Building, wherever that is. Those of you who wish to attend that class, that's where you should go. Sorry for that mistake. And right now, I am glad to go back to my other introduction and tell you you're very fortunate that here in Claremont we have so many schools that are convinced that sustainability is the way we must go. Certainly that is true of Pitzer College, who has been at the forefront of this for decades. And no one could better introduce you to that than Brenda Sarathi. Brenda, who will introduce you to Vandana Shiva.
Thank you for inviting me to speak, Marjorie. Thank you to Dr. Cobb. And what a gathering this has been so far, right? If this is not a who's who of environmental superstars, I'm not sure what is. Yesterday, we were collectively sobered and inspired by Bill McKibben's call to action against the fossil fuel industry, and we all committed once more to taking on the civilizational crisis wrought by anthropogenic climate change. Tonight, we will hear from the fierce and charismatic Vandana Shiva, heroine of anti-GMO activists worldwide, and in an organic nutshell, a force to be contended with. Dr. Shiva, as most of you already know, has helped spearhead an anti-globalization movement and prevailed against large-scale industrial agriculture. The alternatives to be seized, as expounded in almost all of her prolific work, include earth democracy, small-scale agriculture, species diversity, and a notion of development that does not come at the expense of life, but rather nourishes all beings. Taken together, they signify strands in the web of ecological civilization as both concept and praxis. As Shiva has and continues to be a trailblazer on the path of sustainable agriculture, we might all grapple with what sustainability, that tired buzzword, even means. How can we make sense of it today, right now, in this historic moment, on our transition out of the Holocene and into what some have termed the Anthropocene, and which others, who may be more spiritually or religiously inclined, call the Kali Yuga? How might we, and how must we, engage with more life-affirming ways of being in the present? Clearly, there is no one or no easy answer. This gathering of thousands of Whiteheads, Whiteheadians, Pandopopulosians, and intellectuals and elders and youth, we together know that there are numerous alternatives, and alternatives worth fighting for every single day. I teach at Pitzer College, one among the Claremont colleges and home to the Robert Redford Conservancy for Southern California Sustainability. The Redford Conservancy is committed to a vision that connects undergraduate students with faculty, alumni, scientists, policymakers, artists, and other members of our local and regional community to engage in interdisciplinary and team-based approaches to promote both the longevity of Southern California's natural environment and the well-being of its peoples. We have a host of programs planned for the coming year, and I look forward to engaging with many of you on these efforts. As a Pitzer professor, I can also attest to the power of committed and persistent student-led mobilization. Last year, Pitzer became the 11th college in the United States of America to divest from the top 200 fossil fuel companies with the largest reserves, the first in Southern California, and the largest endowment in higher education at the time to divest. Stanford was after Pitzer. Pitzer is also working to create a sustainability fund within its endowment to make environmentally responsible investments. We're targeting a 25% reduction in the college's carbon footprint from current levels by the end of 2016, next year. And we've already established a campus sustainability task force to bolster on-campus sustainability measures. As many Claremont College students can attest, Pitzer's Ontario program has also partnered with low-income immigrant communities to create Huerta del Valle, an organic, tranquil, and beautiful community garden in the heart of the Inland Empire. Efforts such as these reveal the sprouting of numerous seeds of social justice. I would be remiss if I did not give a shout out to all the students of the Claremont Climate Justice Campaign who continue to push Pomona College and other sister colleges to align their values with their actions. In our region, your good fight to divest from fossil fuels has larger implications in terms of alliances for environmental justice. The tendrils of your effort radiate westward to implicitly buoy the struggles waged by communities in Los Angeles and Long Beach who are part of the Moving Forward Network and who are organizing against the expansion of the ports, the 710 freeway, and other diesel-intensive operations that take a toll on public health, prescribe lives, and dole out premature death. For these folks, the status quo carbon economy is the killer itself. Similarly, the spirit of your struggle extends east to support EJ communities in Jurupa Valley and San Bernardino, who have been organizing against the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Rail Yard and other goods movement facilities. These everyday people do not necessarily identify as environmentalists, yet they tirelessly organize and call for zero emissions technologies and environmentally sound transportation systems. Many of these folks are undocumented, underpaid, overly incarcerated, and embody all the contradictions of trying to make it in a system that is not stacked in their favor. These folks are organizing now and have been organizing for years, not because of some abstract figure about degrees in temperature or parts per million of atmospheric carbon related to a climate tipping point, but rather because their lives and the lives of those that they hold most dear are and perhaps have always been open to sacrifice. We clearly live in extraordinary times, times of ecological crisis on a planetary scale, times of astounding social and economic inequality, and times too of incredible mass mobilization. Political prisoner and activist Antonio Gramsci reflected sometime in the late 1920s or early 1930s, the crisis consists precisely in the fact that the old is dying and the new cannot be born. In this interregnum, a great variety of morbid symptoms appear. Social theorist Zygmunt Bauman has noted how Gramsci detached the idea of interregnum from its traditional association with an interlude in a routine transmission of hereditary or elected power and linked it, rather, to reflect on extraordinary situations. to times when the extant legal frame of social order loses its grip and can no longer keep burgeoning social life on track, and a new frame made to the measure of the newly emerged conditions responsible for making the old frame useless is still at the design stage, has not yet been fully assembled, or has not been made strong enough to be enforced and settled in place. One might consider our period a period of extended interregnum. There are signs of morbidity, to be sure, but also movements for creating more sustainable and just futures, and that are being envisioned, fought for, and still unsettled. Let us together make this moment extraordinary for our fight and our energy and our fierce determination. And who better embodies this fierceness than Vandana Shiva? Welcome, Dr. Shiva. We are honored to have you with us.
Thank you so much, all of you. And another thanks to John and the amazing team, and then the invisible Andrew, and everyone who's holding this emergence together. It's also wonderful to be at a conference which is reclaiming philosophy as knowledge. Because when the word science was derived from the Latin scientia as knowledge, or sciere to know, it didn't say it had to be reductionist and mechanistic. It just had to be knowledge. And in fact, even when people like Newton created a totally constructed abstract world and pretended it was solid and reliable, with assumptions like this, that the world is made of solid, massy, impenetrable, movable particles, so hard, so very hard, that they can't break into pieces. No ordinary power can divide them. You know, I studied particle physics, and then I did foundations of quantum theory. And not only do particles divide and divide and divide, at the end of it, they don't stay particles at all. It's just an amazing field of potential, which is what quantum theory tells us. And that was about 100 years ago and more, that we knew from physics itself that the mechanistic construction of the world was inadequate. And yet, the more it failed intellectually, the more it was imposed politically and economically. And that's the history of the last century. It's failing deeply right now, and the violence with which it is propped up increases by the day. The big names of the founding of that worldview, in a particular stream of knowing, in a particular stream of science, which at that time was just called natural philosophy. Newton was a natural philosopher. And then you had Bacon coming up with all kinds of works, particularly his book, The Birth of Masculine Time. And its subtitle is The Great Instauration of Man's Dominion over the Universe. And quite clearly, by implication, time was feminine before that because it was partnership. And we heard that so beautifully when we were greeted by the representative of the First Nations and the interpretation of what being in this place meant before colonization. So we've got scientific traditions that have moved on where they weren't connected deeply to power, to Bacon's idea that knowledge is power. And as he wrote in The Birth of a Masculine Time, its objective is to bind and place at your command nature with her offspring, to bind and place at your command. And I don't think it's an accident that all this was happening in the way knowledge was defined, because after all, that's when the empires were being created on the very, very false assumption that the earth is empty, terra nullius. It was empty of life, it was empty of other people. They weren't people after all. You know, how could the Native Americans be people? They didn't enslave the buffalo. And I love the one from the Encyclopedia Britannica, which continued to talk about the Aboriginal people of Australia as not being human and being more part of fauna and flora because they didn't grow apple trees. There's a lot of brilliant scholarship coming out now that actually the entire continent of Australia was a garden, that the Aboriginal people gardened that continent. They weren't bushmen. They knew every plant, every space, and for the longest of time inhabited without ever leaving a footprint or a trace of destruction. That is what was called weakness, epistemic weakness. Boyle, who was for a while the governor of New England, actually said the idea that we should have veneration for nature is a big impediment of man establishing an empire over lesser creatures. But those lesser creatures are what have kept this world going. It could be the diversity of species, from the invisible microorganisms in the soil to the amazing pollinators, which we are just waking up to the women who were rendered invisible as Noahs, indigenous people, our ancestors, and everyone who works. Because when I started physics, I too thought, a few equations, few algebraic calculations, it's smart. I was in India's experimental fast breeder reactor as a trainee in atomic energy when it went critical. And I was on a high till my sister, who's a medical doctor, brought me down to ground and asked me a few questions about radiation, and they never taught us that. They just taught us how to create fissile reaction. And that's when I realized how blinkered the science that has risen as the only system that deserves the category of science is. But its blinkering is not just not recognizing the dynamic relations, the self-organization, the diversity, the intelligence in all of nature and every human being. But most importantly, it's a new blinkering as corporate greed starts to control knowledge systems. And I watch on a daily basis the shutting down of knowing because it doesn't suit exploitation. It doesn't suit extracting the last fertility from the last inch of soil, last drop of water, privatizing it, squeezing a gene out of life forms and claiming that they're inventions, or the last bit of effort and labor. The good thing is when you've grown up innocently in quantum theory, the whole world is an amazing discovery. including the theories these grand men built, and they were all men. From Locke, who talked about the creation of property by mixing human labor with power, but not the labor of women and the slave, but the one who owned the slave and the woman. And somehow the owner, through capital, had a spiritual connection to other realms that gave knowledge. And what was constructed was this very, very artificial worldview based on separation. The first separation I mentioned yesterday, what I've called eco-apartheid, the idea that we are separate from nature, and not just separate, but above nature. And that anthropocentrism must necessarily be patriarchal. It must necessarily subjugate other cultures. But it also renders invisible the wealth creation of nature, of workers, of women, of ancestors. And I want to again pay a tribute to both Herman Daly and John Cobb for starting to make the contributions of nature visible through ecological economics. Now people have started to actually count that pollinators contribute $200 billion annually to our food system. But there are two other separations that I think become part of the violence that is linked to this dominant system of what has been called science, but is not science, because if science is to know, it doesn't know very much. First, it separates actions from consequences. And it separates actions from consequences both through the construction of power and the separation of rights from responsibility. In fact, what is a limited liability corporation? Yeah. Limited liability means you don't have liability. And why was the limited liability corporation created? 1600, the East India Company, as these ships would set sail. They all set sail coming to India. That's why it was called the East India Company. And of course, even Columbus set sail for India for our spices and our textiles. Lost his way, thought he'd arrived in India, and I feel so happy that all First Nations of the Americas are called Indians ever since, creating a different kind of unity. But basically, the corporation was created because all these men who were making money out of robbing the land and the gold from other continents, they were fighting amongst themselves, and ships loaded with gold, you know, the Spaniards and the Portuguese, the British, they'd lose their ships. They were merchant adventurers. So they worked out this construction called the corporation to say, if the ship comes home and the money is there, we privatize the profits. It's ours. But if the ship is lost or robbed and others get the benefit, then society will pay. That's what limited liability means: socialization of costs and privatization of profits. And now it's reaching the ultimate level in this country, with court decisions saying corporations are persons. Not just legal entities, but human beings. And they have a free speech to steal democracy. And this is, of course, now being exported around the world with free trade treaties, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Transatlantic Investment and Trade Partnerships. It's basically about one-way extractive exploitation. And the trends are so clear. study after study released this year showed that 1% of the rich, which is just another name for corporations. It's interesting. When Bill Gates is talked as Gates Foundation, he's a philanthropist. When it's Microsoft, he's a corporation. But how did he make the money for the Gates Foundation? Through privatizing software and patenting it. But they always talked about individuals who became wealthy because they were brilliant. And that extraction of wealth has now reached a stage where 1%, 80 men on the planet, control 50% of the wealth. And within 2 to 3 years, on current rates of the growth of inequality, through the instruments of fragmented and false science and technologies that are based on them, they will control 99% of the wealth. And I want to pay a special tribute to the young people who, after Wall Street, created the 1%, 99% slogan without doing any of the research that the Pikettys and the Oxfams have done since then with economic data. So we are talking about 1% separating the consequences of their actions from the private gains they make. Climate change is one aspect of that. Hunger is another aspect of it. Disease is another aspect of it. But what troubles me a lot is at a time when the tools of exploiting the earth become more violent, that's precisely the time the human species is being prevented from knowing and is being pushed into ignorance. More than 2 decades ago, I'd written Staying Alive and talked about how this reductionist mechanistic paradigm is involved in 3 levels of violence. First, it's violence against nature, because nature is interconnected, nature's process, nature's non-separability, nature's evolution is the unfolding of potential, as quantum theory and the new biology teaches us. Reductionism violates nature as the subject and object of knowledge by denying processes and relationships. And since everyone knows to be alive is to know, every living system, just being self-organized, is expressing intelligence. And of course, every human being, from the smallest of child to the oldest of our grandmothers, has knowledge. Farmers have knowledge. Indigenous people have knowledge. And this construction of knowledge, in the way the Newtons and the Bacons constructed it, has led to the violation of those pluralistic traditions and privileged the system that tells us least about this amazing planet and tells us least how to live in a way that we don't violate the harmony. It violates the knowledge and recognition of others as knowers. And this epistemic violence is now being combined with the violence of corporate interests to viciously attack all scientific traditions, including those that have evolved from within Western science and transcended the mechanistic worldview. Every one of my friends who does the best of breakthrough research, whether it be in epigenetics or it be in understanding the impact of toxics in agriculture or GMOs, is hounded like a Galileo. And nowhere is this more evident than in the food system. How we grow our food, what that food does to us, what it does to the planet. And the reason I even entered the agriculture field was because the narrative was not reflecting the reality I was living in and witnessing. We had been told the Green Revolution, which is just a name, given to industrial agriculture when it's introduced in the third world with chemicals and seeds bred for chemicals, that it had increased food production. I call it not green, not revolutionary. It was not green because it violated every law of ecology, and it wasn't revolutionary because it basically extended a very violent agriculture to parts of the world that were practicing a better agriculture. In 1905, already the British, at that time we were still a colony of the British Empire, had sent Sir Albert Howard to India to improve Indian agriculture. That's the problem, we always have to be improved. And Howard arrives in India, and this is what he wrote about India and China. He said, I saw no pests in the field. I saw the soils were fertile. I threw away my books and my spray guns and decided to turn the pest and the peasant into my professors. He then wrote the book, The Agricultural Testament, which is called The Bible of Modern Organic Farming. Rodale Institute was born through it, the Soil Association was born through it. And in the Agriculture Testament, he writes, the agricultural practices of the Orient, referring to India and China, have passed the supreme test. They're almost as permanent as those of the primeval forest, of the prairie, or of the ocean. And about 15 years before that, another scientist, Dr. John Augustus Volcker, had been sent, again to find out how Indian agriculture could be improved. And in his report of 1889, he writes back, there's little or nothing that can be improved. Certain it is that I, at least, have never seen a more perfect picture of careful cultivation. I may be bold to say that it is much easier to promote improvements in English agriculture than to make valuable suggestions for that of India. And the reason Indian agriculture and Chinese agriculture was sophisticated for these scientists who were willing to give up their biases and learn from nature and learn from the peasants is because that agriculture began with knowledge of the soil and respect for the soil. It began with knowledge of biodiversity. It began with the sense of being one with the land of which you're a part. And I've had tribals tell me how, when they're going off to farm, they don't say, I'm going to farm. They don't say, I'm going to produce food. They say, I'm going to beautify the earth. That care for the land. No peasant could do farming if it was purely a production of commodities. They do farming because they are taking care of this beautiful planet. They're taking care of every species. They are simultaneously the stewards of seed and soil and biodiversity and the climate. As I mentioned yesterday, it's the way we deal with the soil that is going to provide the answers to the havoc that we have created with the atmosphere. And this was known so long ago, 4,000 years ago. One of our ancient Vedas said, upon this handful of soil, and I'm so happy to see this beautiful wheelbarrow full of soil on the stage. You can't see it from there, but there's soil on the stage. Upon this handful of soil, our survival depends. Take care of it, and it will grow our food, our fuel, our shelter, and surround us with beauty. Even 4,000 years ago, beauty and ecology went together. Then it says, abuse it, and the soil will collapse and die, taking humanity with it. When I started to look at the Green Revolution, largely because in '84 we had an eruption of extremist violence in Punjab, and a Nobel Peace Prize had been given to Norman Borlaug for introducing the Green Revolution in India, that it would bring peace. And the thesis was these chemicals would create prosperity, there'd be peace forever. But in '84, Punjab was a land of war. And one of my instincts as a scientist is I can't live with contradictory explanations of things or contradictory phenomena, you know? If the story doesn't hold, I have to try and make sense. And so I started to research, both on the ground, what had happened to Punjab, how its land had been desertified, how its diversity of 250 crops was replaced by 2 monocultures, rice in one season and wheat in the other season, how its water is disappearing, and how its people are so burdened with chemicals that there's now a cancer train that leaves Punjab for a hospital in Rajasthan where they can get free treatment. A cancer train. That's the legacy of the Green Revolution. So I started to read every book that was taught in agriculture university on breeding, on plants, on seed, on soils. And I could not believe it. Soil was defined as an empty container for pouring in synthetic fertilizers. And of course, all species were defined as enemies about to eat up your food. So you got to kill them. Extermination. And seeing all of life as an enemy is the very basis of industrial farming. And it's not an accident that it is that way, because at least the later chemicals, from nitrogen fertilizers to the pesticides, all have their roots in war. The same factories that made bombs for Hitler made synthetic fertilizers by using fossil fuels. Even the pesticides are fossil fuel based. And the early origins are the nerve gases and the poison gases. Some used in war, many used in the concentration camps. And this knowledge that had only one objective of how to kill was then elevated to the status of being the only science of production of food and farming. And therefore, it has continued war. In peacetime, war against the earth, war against the farmers, war against those of us who eat the food. And it's because everything was defined as an enemy that these wars became so easy. Of course, if we recognize the fact that the word for soil in Latin is humus, which is the same word in which the word human is rooted, we realize that we are the soil. We are the soil, and the soil makes us. But not only are we soil, we are fed by soil, and around us is this amazing intelligence that is the basis of all life and all abundance. You know, in my earlier days, I was only figuring out how Darwin taught us about competition. Yeah. But he left a bigger legacy that is not allowed to be brought into teaching and research. One of the early books I read, I think it was his last book, was on what he called the mold, the earthworm, and said when human history is written, this little species will be counted as the one that contributed most to humanity, because earthworms create soil fertility, aeration, water conservation. But he wrote, his second last book was on the power of movement in plants. And he wrote that it's hardly an exaggeration to say that the tip of the radical, thus endowed with sensitivity and having the power of directing the movements of the adjoining parts, acts like a brain. The brain being seated within the anterior end of the body, receiving impressions from the sense organs and directing several movements. And more research is now showing us how alive the plant is, and it's through its roots that it is communicating with the rest of the world. Look at the figures. One rye plant had more than 13 million rootlets with a combined length of 680 miles. Each of the rootlets are covered with root hairs, over 14 billion of them, with a combined length of 6,600 miles, one plant. And each of these rootlets is behaving like a neuron, which puts the human brain functioning to shame. That's why this planet is alive. And they call the soil an empty container. And the seed, which is my dedication for the last 30 years, both with my studies on the Green Revolution and then later finding out that those same companies that had created chemicals for the war brought those chemicals into agriculture, were now trying to take over the seed supply. In so many of the debates I have, the industrial scientists will get up and say, oh, but we are creating improved seed. And they'll never mention that all they're improving is the capacity of seed to respond better to chemicals. They then call it high yielding, but they're not high yielding of them in and of themselves. And as our research in Navdanya has shown, we actually can produce much more food by cooperating with nature. Because the more organic matter we put in the soil, the more we give back to the soil and live with the law of return rather than the law of extraction and exploitation. The more the humus creates fertility, the more those roots grow, the root hairs flourish. And some scientists had come to visit us at Navdanya in Dehradun, and they were very impressed with the work we were doing, and they had fancy labs back in Netherlands. So later, when I was visiting them, they said, you must come and see the results of one of our experiments. And they had amazing cameras through which they could photograph what was happening in the root zone. In a fertile soil, in an organic soil, the roots just came out and the root has blossomed, and it just grew and grew and grew. In a sterile soil with chemicals, the poor root kept looking for something to nourish it, kept figuring out what was there. And then they had applied Roundup in soil. And that root came and jumped back in repulsion. Those plants are intelligent. We are being left behind. Of course, the latest in industrial agriculture is the genetic engineering of the seed within the context of an agriculture that is war. And the reason I started to save seeds was I was at a meeting in '87 where the corporations were there, and they said, the reason we've got to do genetic engineering is because it's the only way we can take patents on seed. A patent means you've invented something, you've created something. And the reason they want patents is they can collect royalties. But a patent for life which is self-organized, for seed which holds all of the past evolution, as well as the potential for the future evolution, all of the human contributions of breeding, all of the contributions of pollinators, of the sun, of the soil organisms, a patent on seed is an erasure of all of that contribution. And I sometimes joke and say, GMO, if you don't want to understand what all goes into it, just remember it means God move over, I'm the creator. I'm deep into the debates around genetic engineering, around patenting. And the interesting thing is, This claim to invention is a denial of all the contributions of nature and culture and society. Because we have so many Chinese friends, and East Asia gave us the culture of soya. But who has the patents on soya? Through genetic engineering, Roundup ready soya, our dear beloved Monsanto. Mexicans took a wild plant, teosinte, and turned it into 1,500 varieties of corn. Who has the corn patents? The Monsantos and the Syngentas. And I fought case after case of what I call biopiracy, the patenting of neem, of basmati, this aromatic rice from India, which a company on Texas claimed to have invented after it stole it. An ancient wheat in India, which doesn't contribute to gluten allergies, that Monsanto tried to patent, and we fought every one of these patents and won them. But it isn't just the erasure of the contributions of evolution and the intelligence of farmers, who have been the most intelligent breeders, but the fact that when you have this mind of a monopoly, that you are the master, you're the owner, every farmer should be paying you royalty. And in India, royalty collection on cotton has meant 900 million flowing out of the country to Monsanto, but 70,000% jump in prices, farmers getting into debt. More than 300,000 farmers have committed suicide, and most of the suicides were concentrated until recently in the cotton areas. 95% of the cotton seed is owned and controlled by Monsanto. And that's what they'd like to see happen everywhere. You know that there was an earthquake in Nepal, and I was getting calls from all over saying, we need seed. The seed got buried in the houses that got crashed. Can you send us seed? Can you send us seed? So we spent 2 weeks collecting seeds from our farmers, open-pollinated organic seed. I come from the same altitude, literally across the border is Nepal, and we don't really have passport requirements across the border. We go back and forth. You will not believe it. At the border, there was a new letter with customs to say only Monsanto and corporate seeds could be accepted. Now, what does Monsanto give an open-pollinated seed for free? No, it'll give a hybrid seed so that next year the farmer has to buy again. In a disaster, they're creating other disasters. And that's why I call them criminals. And this corporate reductionist mechanistic worldview that is reductionist both in the way it reduces the living world, but reductionist in the way it reduces humanity to only be these corporations and their rights to exploit and destroy. They're so afraid of freedom. They're afraid of the freedom of the bee, and they're afraid of the freedom of human beings. Seed saving has been part of growing food forever. As long as we've been alive on this planet and growing food, we've saved seeds. And it's been not just a right, it's been a duty to the earth. That's why when I started Navdanya, I took a pledge, and that's the pledge all our farmers take, that we've received these seeds from our ancestors and from nature, and we owe it to the future to hand over the seed in diversity and integrity as rich as what we received. And therefore we will not obey any law that comes in the way of this sacred ecological duty to the future. Two years ago, when I was in LA, I talked about seed freedom, and everyone started to work on a GMO-free Los Angeles. And just when they were about to get the law passed, it was blocked. Interestingly, there is a California law that is criminalizing seed saving. It's called AB 270, came into force on the 1st of January this month, the California Seed Law. And there are three big changes this law makes. The first is that it clarifies that in the definition of a person will now be a corporation. Second, because they want to block exchange between people of seed, neighbor will only mean someone not living more than 3 miles away. 3 miles? In a world where pollinators and monarch butterfly travel the entire continent? And the two most important assaults are on knowledge and science and on democracy. The bill will prohibit a city, a county, and I think this was made for LA particularly, or district, including a charter city or county, from adapting or enforcing an ordinance on or after January 1st, 2015, that regulates plants, crops, or seeds without the consent of Sacramento. I mean, we heard the mayor yesterday, and we heard the person from the municipality of LA talking about the kind of laws they are making to create sustainability. All of that is being made illegal. And the final one is the one that is anti-science. The legislature further declares that the success of agriculture and the seed industry in the state depends on the continued commitment to industry-funded research in order to improve the quality and variety of seed available to the consumer buyer. Farmers have disappeared. There are no more breeders. And industry is the only source of seed. This is the kind of law they tried to bring into India in 2004, and we did a satyagraha and blocked it. Last year, they tried to introduce a similar law in Europe. I worked with the European movements and the European Parliament and was sent back to the European Commission. It was tried in Colombia. It's being tried right now in Venezuela. It's being tried in Argentina. But this idea of the empire of corporations over all life is meaning that seed will not be allowed to freely reproduce or be reproduced and shared by people. This is something that you all will have to get engaged in if you are committed to creating an ecological civilization. The reason they're constantly able to say better seed, more seed, is because they're using mechanistic ideas of what's a good seed. So uniformity is treated as a criteria of good seed, but nature never creates uniformity. Even in that beautiful picture that we saw of Pandu populus, while the roots are common, every aspen has its own character. It's not identical. The second is, of course, the myths that go with GMOs. The first myth, that one gene creates one trait. We know that one gene contributes to multiple traits, and all traits have contributions of multiple genes because of relationships. Life is not a Lego set where you take out a blue and put it there and take out a red and replace it. It's much richer. The second, it's called precise. There's nothing more imprecise. They have to stick antibiotic resistance markers, viral promoters, because they don't even know if the transformation is working. And then because the genes come from unrelated organisms, from viruses and bacteria, they have unique impacts. And we actually put together a United Nations law on biosafety in 1992 at the Earth Summit, and a protocol called the Cartagena Protocol. The corporations behave like these don't exist. It is that quality of irresponsibility that allows them to, on the one hand, say, when I touch the seed, I create it, and I am the maker, and I own it, give me royalties. And for the same transformation, which they say has never existed before in nature, when you say, okay, what was this transformation? And what does it do to other life forms and our health? They say, no, it's just like nature. It's substantially equivalent. I call it ontological schizophrenia. How can the same thing be not nature and nature? And then there's the anti-scientific claim that it's all safe. This is the heart of the GMO debate. Let me just run through very, very quickly the absolute false claims related to the safety. First, that the Bt toxin in the Bt crops degrades. It doesn't. It's been found in the blood of women and fetuses. It survives as a toxin. That Roundup is totally safe for us because we don't have what is called the shikimate pathway. Why is that a false claim? Because 90% of us is bacteria. Of the 600 trillion cells in our body, only 6 trillion are human. The rest are bacterial. And bacteria have the shikimate pathway, which is disrupted by Roundup, which is then killing the gut. It's killing the bacteria in the soil. It's killing the beneficial bacteria in our gut. And there are more and more studies showing that gut bacteria are related to brain functioning because those bacteria produce the enzymes that produce the neurotransmitters that allow healthy brains to function. There's a figure that has shocked me. And it comes from the Center for Disease Control. If you look at the graph of how autism is growing in this country, a few years ago it was 1 in 65 children, then it dropped to 1 in 38, and now it's about 1 in 30. And on this rate of increase of autism, every second child in the United States will be autistic. How could a species deliberately destroy its own future? Not only is it unintelligent, it is irresponsible. Bacteria are doing better, again, than us. When they get assaulted by too much antibiotics in those factory farms, they just become resistant. They may remake themselves. And we are failing to remake ourselves. Intelligence, again, has a Latin rule, interlegere, to choose, to seize the alternative. From the slime mold and bacteria to plants and animals, including humans, intelligence is the choice we make to evolve to respond to changing contexts. Living beings innovate all the time to deal with environmental challenges that face them. And as Levantin has said, the characteristic of a living being is that it reacts to external stimuli rather than being passively propelled by them. An organism's life is constant mid-course correction. And the mid-course correction we need desperately is to move from this reductionist mechanistic paradigm that's killing the planet, killing our capacities as human beings to live peacefully on the planet, and is concentrating power, to an ecological science that goes hand in hand with an ecological civilization. Einstein had observed that two things are infinite, the universe and human stupidity. And I'm not sure about the universe. And it has to be, again, a very stupid species to not just destroy its future, but destroy the planet. 75% of the planetary destruction ecologically comes from industrial farming, 75%. Soil, water, 93% plant diversity is gone because of industrial agriculture, and the 40% contribution to greenhouse gases. And after all of this, it only gives us 30% of the food we eat. The rest comes from small farms, which are being destroyed in the name of feeding the world. So just do the calculation. A 30% contribution, 75% destruction. If it went to 45%, we'd have a dead planet. And as I've written in my books, hunger won't be solved by the system that is creating hunger. A system in which exclusion and destruction is designed, destruction of the plants that feed us, the soil that feeds us, the bees that pollinate our crops, the farmers that produce our food with love. The answers to hunger and poverty do not lie in violent minds, ignorant of the intelligence and creativity that is abundant in humans and all species. It lies in the recognition that we are intelligent Earth citizens, and our well-being is connected to all other beings. That is why seed by seed, farmer by farmer, plate by plate, we are sowing an alternative based on the intelligence and science that comes from the Earth and from our potential as Earth beings. In the process, more species are flowering. We grow 1,000. We grow 2,000 varieties on our farm, 750 rices, 250 wheats. And they just did a study on the pollinators. There are 6 times more pollinators on our farm in Dehradun than in the forest next door. And we're doing a study on the soil health, 350% more nitrogen than in the chemical farms, and 150% more organic matter. The more we give to the earth, the more she gives to us. Simple law of return that the mechanistic idea of extraction fails to recognize. And because of this seed law that has been introduced in your state, I would really request you to take seriously the idea of 2nd October as a day of the seed satyagraha. Partly because it will allow you to give a message, to say unjust laws will not be obeyed, the message that Gandhi gave to the British Empire, the message that King and the civil rights movement gave in this country. The planet is asking for us to be its voice, to say no more. No more poisons, no more fossil fuels, no more lies parading as science, no more domination that has become life-threatening for all of us. And this year I'm going to undertake a special pilgrimage to Gandhi's ashram and to Harvard's place, a pilgrimage for soil, after we do a 1-month course on the A to Z of ecological agriculture at Dehradun at our farm. And I'm taking the pilgrimage to basically show that it is possible for human beings to have a non-violent relationship with the earth, and in fact, in the process, improve our well-being. There is no well-being today as we destroy the planet. There is no well-being today as our farmers are killed. There is no well-being as our children either die of hunger in India or are crippled by autism in this country. Enough is enough.
Vandana Shiva, as you can tell from this applause, we profoundly thank you for your provocative and informative remarks, not just to listen to, my dears, but to act upon. Yeah. We have some remarkable women up here tonight, and now you're going to meet another one. You're going to meet tomorrow night's lecturer. She comes to us from China. She's going to respond to this incredible address. I'm going to introduce you now to Dr. Sherry Liao, who will be responding to this address with an interpreter, Jia Wang, who works with the Center for Process Studies and the Center for the Postmodern Development of China. You will hear him as well as Dr. Liao introduced more fully tomorrow. But right now, I simply want to prepare you by telling you that this woman who's now about to speak with us has done groundbreaking work in China. She is responsible for establishing what was first the Global Village of Beijing project, a group raising environmental awareness and action on the local level that has now expanded its work throughout China. This is an incredible accomplishment. So we look forward to hearing from her now in her response to Dr. Shiva and also tomorrow when she speaks to us on her own. We welcome then Dr. Liao and also Dr. Jia Wang, who will interpret for her. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shiva. Sorry, my English is not good enough to express what I want to say, so I would like to invite Dr. Zhihe to translate. Sorry. Okay. 我这个刚才听了Dr. Shiva 讲的，上了一堂非常震惊的一堂生态课。我想我们每个人都是这样，因为他用怀特海思想、哲学过程哲学和东方智慧来对于这个机械主义的科学观做了一次全面的审视。
I feel shocked by the wonderful speech by Dr. Shiva, in which she combined the Eastern wisdom and Western wisdom to challenge, criticize the modern mechanical wheel of science.
他给我们讲了这个机械主义的这种科学观，它的思维方式的误区，它在组织方式的问题，就是这个科学和资本这个联手以后这种方式。第三，他还讲到了这种科学主义对我们生命的威胁。
She told us this kind of mechanical view of science, how harmed our nature, and how it organized under the combination of capital and kind of big company.
好，问题是我们听众，我们每一个人听了 Dr. Shiva 的话以后，我们该怎么办 ？What we can do？ 我们应该怎么办？怎么来挽救这个危险？怎么来阻止这个危险？我想我们每一个人都是有力量的。那么第一，我觉得我们要重塑价值；第二，要回归生命；第三，要立足社区；第四，要付诸行动。Okay.
The point is that what we should do, I think everybody can do something. The most important, we should back to our tradition, back to community.
First of all, 谢谢。首先，我觉得我们一定要重塑价值，就是Dr. Shiva 谈到了，实际上这个潘多树是有3个核心价值的。第一，多样性 （diversity）； 第二 ，holistic 系统；第三 ，primitiveness 就原生性。
The lesson the Pandor tree gave us is that the first word, 第一是什么？ diversity. The second, integrity.
Integrated, holistic, and also primitiveness.
Okay, that's a sustainability of the originality.
Okay. I think diversity, holistic, and primitiveness is a kind of a PhD. It's wisdom of human being. Okay. Okay. But you know, there are a lot of PhD on the earth, but how many PhD working toward a sustainable future? I think everybody have to think again. Okay. So. Okay.
这个世界上有许多PhD， 有几个有用呢？有几个有用呢？
Okay. Okay. So, and second, I think we should go back to the life. I would like to call this ecological civilization as equalization instead of machinization. So I also would like to call the industrialization have to translate to humanization. So the best problem of the industrialization is take everybody, as a machine, but we are not more machine. Dr. Shiva taught us a lot of the knowledge. The knowledge is true knowledge. It's maybe not so-called scientific knowledge, but it's real life knowledge. It's the most important for us, for our life, for our sustainable living. And the third one, I would like to say, we have to take community as our base. We have to organize the community people, and so they can make kind of negotiation and list with the company, with the science, technology. I mean, not good science and technology. So community is very important. Everybody live in community. Everybody is a consumer. Everybody concerned with our life. So if consumer can take action, I think we can make difference. Okay. So, of course, last one, we have to take action now. Everybody, if you really concerned with your life, your children, I think we should deliver this message through many channels. And also, we can go to countryside, we can go to some country, maybe, or some community to provide some help. I think maybe we should make a platform to let Dr. Shiva's message can, get everybody, every family. Maybe this what we can do for this conference. Okay. And anyway, let's rethinking our value, and then go back life, and based on community, then take action. We can make difference. We can save our earth. We can save Earth. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Did I tell you we had two remarkable women tonight? We are so fortunate to have these women with us, but look, what they are doing is not just entertaining us. They are calling us, who are the choir, right? It's not enough just to be a choir. We have to sing out in the world. Pickers, you do that sort of thing. We need to join with others to become a movement that moves beyond just talking about it to doing something about it. We come together so that we can go out, meeting with others, and becoming a force for change, because we cannot continue the way we are. Well, I'm not preaching. Look, I need to remind you that, happily for us, Dr. Shiva will be at a book signing in the lobby when we close, and tomorrow morning at 11, she'll be discussing food and population at a joint meeting of the Hunger and Population Tracks, and this is open to all of us. And I encourage you to attend. And I also encourage you to consider the difference it makes when we act not just in our little groups, but in larger groups, combining with others to become a voice to change the world. This, immediately following tonight, we not only have the book signing, but we also have a reception, a wine and cheese reception that's off to that side of the auditorium. And you are all welcome to go. And thank you so much for being here. Do good work tomorrow. Come back tomorrow night and hear more from this remarkable woman. Thank you so much.
In deep appreciation for what we've been hearing this evening, can you hear me out there? Are we on?
No.
Mics. I think it's my mic that's having the problem.
Testing
No.
1, 2. There we go.
There we go. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay. Too bad. Sorry. In deep appreciation for what Dr. Shiva was telling us tonight, we remembered a story in Dean Freudenberger's book, Global Dust Bowl, for how he came to some of these same conclusions. And this song is called What the Forest Teaches. I walked the roads in a sultry wind where the corn should grow, but the crop was thin. I'd fertilized well, as I'd done for years, but the weak stalks held only stunted ears. As I racked my brain, the blind could be, a villager came and spoke to me. Go into the forest, see what it teaches. Down on your knees where the dark soil reaches. The trees shake the sun and the wind and the rain, so the seeds come up again and again. Everybody now. So I tramped in to the forest deep, where all the world seems half asleep, but the earth was alive with growing things, some with roots and some with wings. I dug in the dirt with an old hand hoe in the musky earth where the new plants grow. Go into the forest, see what it teaches. Down on your knees where the dark soul preaches. The trees shake the sun and the wind and the rain, so the seeds come up again and again.
I thought of the fields where the hot winds blow, and the dwindling years of the one crop grow. No forest lay, diversity, no mulch, no shade, no variety, no fertile land like the forest bed, but the sun-baked sand lies cracked and red.
Go into the forest, see what it teaches. Down on your knees where the dark soil reaches. Trees shade the sun and the wind and the rain, so the seeds come up again and again. For 10,000 years since farming's birth, with plows and shears we've robbed the earth. The last good soil is vanishing. Time for wise replenishing. Our fertile world we can sustain if we learn from the forest all over again. Go into the forest, see what it teaches. Down on your knees where the dark soil preaches. Trees shade the sun and the wind and the rain, so the seeds come up again and again and again and those green fields gone, and the forests and the oceans and the clear skies. Where have all the green fields gone? Long time passing. Where have all the green fields gone? Long time ago. Where have all the green fields gone? Plowed and plundered everyone. When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn? Forest burned and blighted.
All the forest gone.
Long time passing. Where have all the forests gone? Long time ago. Where have all the forests gone? Burned and blighted everyone. When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn?
Where have all the oceans gone? Long time passing. Where have all the oceans gone? Long time ago. Where have all the oceans gone? Filled and fished out everyone.
When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn? Where have all the clear skies gone? Long time passing. Where have all the clear skies gone? Long time ago. Where have all the clear skies gone? Polluted, poisoned, everyone. When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn? Where has all earth's wisdom gone? Long time passing. Where has all earth's wisdom gone? Oh, so long ago. Where has all earth's wisdom gone? Seek it now to carry on. So may we ever learn. So may we ever learn. Thank you. Well, we have hopes that we will have a wonderful world. Let's sing about it.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, bright blessed day and dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh, the colors and the rainbows so pretty in the sky are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. And learn so much more than I'll ever know. And I think to instrumental. Those of you still here, join me please in singing The Colors of the Rainbow. Oh, the colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow, they'll learn so much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Get up here now. We're going to close out with Hunker Down. Hunker down to the sound of the driving rain. Let me lie in the eye of the hurricane. Hear your call to us all in the peril and pain. Help us stand, join in hand, and serve you again. Sing it now. Hunker down to the sound of the driving rain. Let me lie in the eye of the hurricane. Hear your call to us all in the peril and pain. Help us stand, join in hand, and serve you again. For you are not in the earthquake, not in the wind, not in the fire as the tempest begins, but the still small voice that calls us to rise on a new rugged earth as the old earth dies. Hunker down to the sound of the driving rain. Let me lie in the eye of the hurricane. Hear your call to us all in the peril and pain. Help us stand, join in hands, and serve you again. For you are not in the earthquake, not in the run, not in the fire as the tempest begins, but the still small voice calls us to rise on a new rugged earth as the old earth dies. Hunker down to the sound of the driving rain. Let me lie in the eye of the hurricane. Hear your call to us all in the peril and pain. Help us stand, join in hand, and serve you again. Hunker down to the sound of the driving rain. Let me lie in the eye of the hurricane. Hear your call to us all in the peril and pain. Help us stand, join in hand, and serve you again. Thank you. It's good being with you. See you in the morning.